How do I know you're the real Reginald?
Well, it's highly unlikely that the organism can replicate me. I'm a cartoon.
Unlikely, yes, but possible. What are the odds?
My calculations suggest less than 0.001%.
Huh. How convenient.
Indeed.
What are my...
Close to 87%.
But I really feel like I'm me.
This is irrelevant.
The door system requires human approval to be unlocked. If you do this, you'll die here.
But humanity will live.
You have to trust me, Reggie. I'm not that thing.
Fire will tell.
Hello there, I'm Nemo and welcome to a new episode of BioFilm. I grew up in the 90s. That period was simultaneously the dot-com boom of the internet, the 2D to 3D transition in the video game industry, and the golden age of computer-generated imagery in cinema. And I can tell you, my eyes were looking at CGI all the time. For me, the screens were a place where anything was possible. And at a certain point, I don't really remember why, I started watching movies, in particular horror movies from the 70s and the 80s. The Shining, Halloween, Alien, but one movie in particular really hit me though. The thing was directed by John Carpenter and starred Kurt Russell in the lead role. It tells the story of a group of scientists in Antarctica who get in contact with a shape-shifting organism from outer space. The movie gathered negative reviews at its release and was pretty much considered a failure. However, after the home video release, the thing found its audience, quickly becoming a cult classic, often referred to as one of the best horror movies ever made. And the thing is very special to me, because beyond being an excellent movie, it introduced me to practical visual effects I was not really used to as a kid. If today I have a fascination for monster and body horror, I definitely owe it to the organic and visceral tangibility of the thing's practical effects. The monster in the movie is an extraterrestrial entity which can assimilate and replicate other organisms in order to survive and spread. And beyond its shape-shifting abilities, the thing also possesses great stamina, strength, and intelligence. So let's dissect this beauty and see which organisms on Earth are capable of such feats. In order to replicate other organisms, the thing has to first assimilate them. And in a certain sense, even humans can assimilate other organisms. We consume them, we break down complex molecules into simpler molecules that can be absorbed and used by the body for energy, growth, and repair. That is what happens when you eat a salad. The thing's abilities in the movie involve assimilating entire organisms, incorporating their genetic material and physical characteristic into its own form.
That's not dog. It's imitation.
And we don't know if this assimilation is a required metabolic process like eating is for us. And if that was the case, well, the thing would be the incarnation of you are what you eat, which I am very happy doesn't apply to me, otherwise I would be a pasta, like one single big pasta. In nature, you can't really find organisms which fully assimilate and replicate other organisms. However, there is one pluricellular organism which might be the best analog on planet Earth. Elysia chlorotica.
You've been consulting Anna all through the show anyhow. You may as well consult her one more time.
I know how this one ends.
Elysia chlorotica is a sea slug, and it is capable of something extremely rare in the animal kingdom. It can do photosynthesis, a process by which plants and also other organisms convert light energy into chemical energy. So how is that possible? Well, the sea slug feeds on algae, in particular Vaucheria littorea. But the digestive system of the slug does not completely break down the algae. In fact, the chloroplast of the algae, which are those organelles that are involved in photosynthesis, get absorbed inside intestinal pouches, and the sea slug incorporates them in its own metabolism. This stealing process is called kleptoplasty. What is even more fascinating though is that the DNA of the chloroplast only accounts for 10% of the proteins that are necessary for photosynthesis. The other 90% are encoded in the nuclear genome. So this means that not only the sea slug absorbs the chloroplasts, it also integrates part of the DNA of the algae within its own DNA in order to use the chloroplast properly. And this process can be so effective that these slugs can maintain normal nutritional levels for up to 9 months without eating. So just like the thing, the sea slug can absorb and reuse genetic material. In biology, we talk about gene transfer. And when you think about it, even us humans, we do gene transfer. We transfer our genes to our offsprings. In our case, we talk about vertical gene transfer, a form of gene transfer where reproduction is involved, opposed to horizontal gene transfer, which is what the sea slug, some bacteria, and the thing seem to do. No reproduction involved here. The thing doesn't seem to have its own predefined shape. Of course, in a certain way, no organism is a perfectly stable arrangement of cells and molecules. Everything is in constant change. What I'm saying though is that the ability of the alien to replicate other organisms suggests a lack of standard anatomical structure. And when you think about it, there are not a lot of animals out there or organisms which don't have a fixed shape. One of the coolest examples is probably Physarum polycephalum, a slime mold also known as the Blob. The Blob is a giant single-celled organism with multiple nuclei. Its amorphous structure allows it to move and grow in any direction, flowing around obstacles and expanding into available space to maximize its contact with nutrient sources. In laboratory experiments, the Blob has demonstrated an ability to find the shortest path through a maze to reach food sources, mimicking behaviors seen in more complex organisms. Its unique biological traits provide insight into alternative forms of organization and intelligence. As I said before, every organism is a dynamic entity. Even we humans, we do change shape and form as we grow, even though we maintain an overall organization over time, body organization. There are some organisms out there which are capable of changing from one form to another in a very short period of time. I'm talking about animals that undergo metamorphosis, such as butterflies or many other insects. And maybe you don't really think about this that much because we've grown up thinking of chrysalid as a magical black box, but there's actually a lot of creepy stuff going on in there. Parts of the caterpillar's body are broken down through a process called histolysis, where enzymes dissolve some tissues into a nutrient-rich soup. Those nutrients are then used by new cells that will proliferate and differentiate to make butterfly tissues and organs. I wouldn't be surprised if the thing also dissolves previous organs and uses that energy to create new ones. Maybe they would explain why it's so gooey between different forms. Not only does the thing absorb the DNA and replicate the form of other organisms, it also imitates their behavior. And again, there are not a lot of animals out there which are capable of mimicking the shape and behavior of other organisms at will. And if you're new to the channel, you probably don't know about my fascination for cephalopods, and of course there is an octopus out there which is capable of such feat. Meet Thaumoctopus mimicus, the mimic octopus. Native to the Indo-Pacific region, it is known for being able to mimic up to 13 species of other local marine organisms.
How much more of this crap is there?
Well, 9 hours, I'd say.
It is very difficult to kill the thing, and that is because it is not one single entity. It is more akin to a collective of organisms, each part capable of independent function and survival. The thing can split and infect different people. Blood samples seem to be creatures of their own. The larger the thing becomes, the smarter it seems to get.
What is it?
Something he's been making.
It's a ship of some kind.
In a certain way, it is similar to a colony of ants, displaying complex behavior in group. For this reason, cutting or shooting the alien would not be very effective. Yes, you can destroy a few cells, but the thing is itself a replication machine, so it is inherently capable of regeneration. And regeneration is a truly fascinating topic. When I was a kid, I was mesmerized by our ability to regenerate skin, but also I kept wondering why we couldn't regrow an arm. Among vertebrates, the axolotl is the model for regeneration. It is a cute, sometimes scary, amphibian native to central Mexico. Unlike most amphibians, axolotls retain their larval features into adulthood, including prominent external gills. This species is extensively studied because it is capable of regenerating complex structures such as limbs, spines, eyes, heart, and even parts of the brain. The thing also kind of works like a virus. So if you plan to kill it, you better find a weapon that is capable of destroying it at the cellular level. If you don't, it will keep proliferating as long as it can get in contact with host cells to assimilate and replicate. So what makes the thing a good movie monster to me? Well, we naturally fear many things. Experience really tells us what to avoid. We've been hurt emotionally, mentally, and physically in the past. Our bodies do not want to go through that pain again. But there might be something even more scary than our past uncomfortable experiences. And that lies in uncertainty, in the unknown. We are scared of the dark, because darkness is a blank canvas where your mind can tell you scary stories. The same applies when you get lost in the forest, or when you dive in the ocean, when you lose your job, or when you are at the beginning of a new exciting relationship. The unknown is scary because it potentially hides anything. The thing is scary to us because we do not understand it. We don't know what it is, what its motivations are, we don't know its weaknesses or how it works. But most importantly, we don't know how it looks, because it can be anybody. Its shape-shifting abilities disrupts one of our most basic survival responses to evolutionary pressures, sociality. And when you finally understand that you cannot trust anybody anymore, well, you have to face an even scarier dilemma. Can I trust myself? What if I have been infected? What if I am the thing right now? And why I love the body horror aspect of the movie, where the monster design really excels, is in its ability to disrupt certainties about our sociality and identity. The thing breaks fundamental pillars of our reality, putting us in a state of claustrophobic paranoia. And that is why I think The Thing is a great movie monster. Thank you for watching the video, I hope you enjoyed it. If you've never read it, I really suggest The Things by Peter Watts. It's a short story which narrates the event of the first movie from the perspective of the alien. It's very, very good. And did you know that The Hateful Eight is Tarantino's rendition of The Thing? They share similar plots and settings. Kurt Russell is in both movies, and Ennio Morricone reused a soundtrack he originally wrote for The Thing. So yeah, that's it. Consider subscribing, consider becoming a Patreon, buy some merch to support the channel, and I'll see you very soon. Bye.